The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar today, Cost-Based Quoting for New Products. My name is Stacey Adams. I'm the Director of Marketing and kind of working in control room here today. So I'll just give you a few things to note as we get started. Number one, please feel free to ask questions. It's actually better that way. So there's a chat box on the right side of your screen. Feel free to enter your questions at any time. We may pop in and ask during the session or save them till the end. So go ahead and do those. And also, we're always asked if the recordings will be available, and they certainly will be available after the session. So look out for an email from us with ways to access that so you can share it with your colleagues. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Adrian. Good afternoon, Adrian.
Good afternoon, Stacey. Thank you for a great introduction. It's always a pleasure to speak in front of some people who really appreciate these topics that we deal with every day in our daily lives. And today's the topic of our webinar is cost-based quoting for new products. We're going to cover a variety of things and concepts about what is the difference between CPQ and cost-based quoting. And we're also going to be sharing some real-time examples of what are some best practices of truly cost-based quoting applications. So I would say let's get started. Let's get started with just a brief introduction. So my name is Adrian Bruchowski. I have been doing cost-based quoting applications and product costing applications for over 15 years for a variety of Fortune 500 companies. And the company that we are part of is called 3C Software. Basically, 3C Software, we have we're entrepreneur in the space of product costing profitability, kind of slipped in the space of cost-based quoting, and we are innovators and inventors of this piece of software, Impact ECS, which we're going to be demoing today as well and showing you some examples of cost-based quoting application that we've built for some of our customers. Having said that, so we want to focus on, a little bit on the industry. What is driving? What do we see out there in the market right now? What is driving companies, and how does that lead to and relate to cost-based quoting applications? So this is a neat little statistic that we've seen that in 2018, manufacturers are focused on new products and believe that new products are going to be the driving force of their revenue growth strategies, right? What does that mean? That also means that there's going to be a lot of spending being done in the R&D department. There's going to be a lot of work done in the quoting estimating space. There's going to be a lot of work done in the customer success or customer onboarding departments, engineering departments. So we want a little bit, I think this slide is a good statistic of saying, things in the economy have changed very rapidly, and in order to keep up, new products have become the revenue growth factor that drive the manufacturing company strategies, right? Now, new products also mean, that they might be penetrating new markets with new conditions. That means we might need to price our products differently. New products could also mean we might need to engineer our products differently. So all these things we're going to cover today, and how we can implement those strategies into a good cost-based quoting application. So let's talk about just a minute about what is this big misconception that is in the market that we see today of CPQ versus quoting versus cost-based quoting, so basically, right? And this is what I do for a living. I travel a lot to companies, and just yesterday I was at a prospect and we talked about the same thing. And what is this term that we call CPQ, this configure price quote, right? So, and this customer yesterday made a good reference, right? It's basically, it says, hey, I refer to CPQ as an application where I can go shopping online. I want to buy a tractor, and I want a tractor that's green, so I'm going to choose the option that's green. I want the size of tires that I want the size of motor that I want, and it's all going to be picked together just like a shopping cart. And at the end, I'm going to see a price, and that price is basically going to give me a margin, and this is what I'm going to be offering to the customer, right? That's what we call a configure price quote application. Now, we know, in industries with complex costing environments and ever-changing costing requirements, such as new product, it's not always that easy of choosing just a certain attributes of selections and then coming up with a price to quote, so to say, right? So what happens is there's this space that's really has been a gray area for a long time, and where CPQ is not a good fit, right? So what if one good example for that is, what if the components that we need to quote don't exist, right? So CPQ does not work for everyone. We made that very clear just now. So with most CPQ processes, the cost of each component that we're trying to quote, or that is part of this bill of materials, we call it, already exists. It has a price to it. It has a routing to it. And for a lot of new products, that is just not the case, right? So we're kind of inventing it almost from a napkin based approach. And so we have to come up with a truly bottoms up engineered kind of costing or quoting approach. And that's not what CPQ does, right? There's this big misconception in the market, I think, and I hope that you guys agree with me about that, right? So what we have seen in the market is there's a lot of industries where the configured element doesn't already exist, and this CPQ board does not work. What we recommend is a better approach, what we call a cost-based quoting application. And cost-based quoting really transforms a napkin or idea approach to a fully loaded bill of material, routing, profitability or feasibility study, right? So I like the wording that we put together here, that we say, new product ideas or requests for quotes into detailed BOMs, routings, sourcing and vendor data. We have to make decisions about buy versus make, and other expenses that we want to allocate, overhead expenses, engineering, R&D, testing, etc. And then we calculate very specific bottom-up based product cost, apply revenue to calculate the margin, and then what we get is a very detailed cost-based quoting application. So cost-based quoting is not a configuration of existing or costed inputs or options, but it's calculating a very unique cost for something that does not currently exist, right? And it can be just as simple as, custom printing application, right? We all know every market is driving from less commodity to everything being more and more custom. Right? So that's a big problem. We see that a lot in industries that people always want different colors of cars, right? They want to have now a black package, right? So it's not just, okay, choose a color for a car. It has a certain combinations, and more combinations just add a degree of complexity when we talk about the space of quoting and estimating that result in a need for this cost-based quoting applications, right? So this cost-based quoting adds value when we analyze a new product, that is currently developed by our company, or it goes through several development stages, or a new quote that is requested from our customers that doesn't exist anywhere yet. Right? Now, how does this cost-based quoting add real value, right? And this is kind of a statistic that we put together that we have seen from our customers. So there's a lot of not confusion, but there's a lot of indiscipline or a lot of unstructured processes a lot of times that go into this. How does a request for a new product then flow through an entire organization that eventually becomes a quote, so to say, or an estimate, right? And so just to have a system that houses all the data and manages all the workflows, controls the workflows, just having this whole pricing discipline, a whole database where all prices are housed and staged and can be compared over time to another is a very, very important one. So this area of having a pricing discipline throughout an organization in the way we estimate our costs and estimate our prices is very, very important. And usually that leads to increased margins or increased margin results. Right? So what we have seen is usually over the amount of the first year when we implement a cost-based quoting application, that we see a 1% improvement in establishing this pricing discipline. Right? Everybody goes up from the prices from the same platform, same assumptions, same methods, same methodology, and everything is very transparent, how the costs are calculated and how the margins are calculated. Right? It also eliminates room for errors, typos, etc., stuff like that. Right? So 1% improvement is not unrealistic. It's very, very realistic in the first year. Another area of value add, or we also can call them ROI, is the increase in speed, turning around a quote inquiry to closing a deal, right? And simply what we've seen is just an overload of work for these estimating departments. So what we have seen usually throughout the first year of our customers is a 5% increase in speed to turn around quotes through eliminating these non-value add activities. And non-value activities can be, copy and pasting, creating a new Excel spreadsheet over and over again, all these kind of tedious and manual non-value add activities, so to say, right? And of course, there's also the third ROI that we have seen throughout the first year of cost-based quoting applications is this reduction of error rates, right? Just anything from simply typos to just comparing one quote to another in the same industry, making sure that everything is in the same, and that it even makes sense. Just a reduction of error rate by having everything in one common platform with a common methodology has become very, very valuable, right? So this slide is supposed to answer the question, what do I get out of it if I implement a cost-based quoting application? Now move away from my current stages of having a mixture between maybe Access and Excel right now and Outlook with emails flowing around everywhere. If I get a system that houses my entire cost-based quoting process, what kind of ROI can I expect? Right? This is what this slide is supposed to answer. So let's talk about a little about the cost-based quoting process. So there's a couple of steps that we usually see, and each step is affected by the stakeholders, the data, and the evaluation activities used to analyze the outcome. We're going to focus on these three things in just a minute, right? But usually how it works when we talk about cost-based quoting, we start with, from somewhere there comes a new request. It might come through a CRM system, it might come through an email, might come through an internal developed system, right? But there's a new request that comes in. then the second thing, we need to define some attribute data, and based on the attribute data, we need to define a bill of material, a routing, and apply some cost, right? Once we have collected all this information, we can calculate some cost, apply some revenue, establish a price, and then deliver results in the form of reports or feasibility reports or feasibility views or dashboards, so to say, right? So what are these three components, so to say, that are involved in this? Are, again, the stakeholders, so who's involved, the data, what's known and what needs answers, and the evaluation activities, how is it go, how we're going to cost this product and how we're going to make this happen, how we're going to produce this, right? So let's focus just for a minute on the stakeholders. So who is involved? Usually the stakeholders in this cost-based quoting process exist in multiple departments across the organization, right? So in the process of gathering new requests, people usually work in the sales and marketing or engineering. When we get to the point where we collect BOM routing based on certain attribute data, we're talking to engineers, research and development, or product development department, and all this kind of information needs to then come together and then flow to these other departments, right? The pricing or estimating guys, the cost controlling guys, the finance guys, to make sure we actually make money with it. Once we calculate the cost, it's a lot of times passed on to the sales controlling or commercial finance teams, where they say, okay, this is competitively priced, we can deal with this, this is the margin we're going to make. And a lot of times you also have to calculate some reports of results for upper management to just give a blessing or approval, right? So there's a lot of stakeholders involved across many departments, and what we see is with our cost-based quoting application, it's a big transformation of instead of Excel spreadsheets or PDF reports flying around through Outlook everywhere, we have everything collected and stored in one platform. Everybody can understand what's behind it. It's a transparency and degree of transparency that adds to this workflow and keeping all these stakeholders on the same page. Data is also a very, very important and complex topic when we talk about cost-based quoting application. So the cost-based quoting process requires getting data from multiple places and running a bunch of calculations to calculate set of results. And what do I mean with that? So in this process of when we gather new requests or collect attribute data and come up with BOMs and routings, a lot of times we collect these requests through a web or through spreadsheets or through a CRM system, CAD system, product lifecycle management systems, right? And what happens is we collect this data, then match it up with data from other systems, such as either SAP modules or in general MES or shop floor systems, logistics systems, ERP system, Oracle, you name it, right? But what happens is there's a request, there's attributes, and they need to be matched to a set of data that's housed completely somewhere else. So that adds a great degree of complexity, but also requires a lot of times a deep knowledge of the people who are dealing with putting together these requests, right? So what happens next is usually we collect and coordinate the data, and then we're supposed to calculate some cost. When we calculate some cost, that usually happens in another system as well. That might be another Excel spreadsheet that gets created, another Access database that gets created, right? But then we have to calculate these kind of cost sheets or product cost overviews. Then they are passed on to the commercial teams or the commercial finance teams, where then these teams look specifically at pricing, how competitive are we, and that might result in another source, right? Another spreadsheet, another Access database, another tool, right? Where we then look at specifically profit analysis or contribution margin or gross margin analysis, or competitiveness across industry, across competitors, etc. Right? And then when we talk about approvals and blessings, so to say, for these kind of quotes, that's usually happen. That is mostly housed as well in Outlook, through emails flying around. Right? So it's all a very cumbersome and very dissolved or disillusioned process that happens with many people involved, a lot of data involved from a lot of data sources. Right? Now let's talk about a little bit of evaluation activities. How does it all work, right? And a lot of times people get so hung up into, copy, pasting data from left to right and putting all the data together, and they're happy to do it and send it to somebody, and they feel like the job is done. What happens though is that's not the end of the story, right? So what we want to do is we want to be able to track the status of a quote or an estimate. Where is it stuck? Who's responsible for it? Who has looked at it? Who has not looked at it yet? Whose input are we waiting on? Right. So the ability to control this entire process is very, very important. And our customers do this through a status tracker that we have. How many quotes are out there right now? What stage are they in? What is the aging of it? What are the overall quote values that we're expecting by month end? What are some risks and opportunities of it, especially when we talk about environments where we have sensitivity of raw material prices, right? What's going to happen if we close these deals this month compared to next month? Next month, and we might have an increase in raw material prices. Are we still going to have the same margins that are in place or not? And then, of course, what is the communication between capacity restraints or supply chain planning to production facilities, but also the ability to audit things and having everything in one place recorded and traceable. It's a very, very important one, right? So it all makes sense, but what happens in real life is really this picture, right? We get a new request, we collect all the data, we try to calculate cost, we get a price, we deliver results, and then somebody comes back and says, oh, wait a minute, let's go back. Oh, well, this was kind of wrong, right? So we kind of jump back and forth. And what happens is when you throw in the mix of the amount of people that are involved, the amount of data that's involved, the amount of data sources that's involved, and the overall complexity of the process itself, that becomes a very, very complex process, right? And I hope now you've gathered, that this is not a CPQ application, right? CPQ is much simpler. It doesn't require all these kind of deep knowledge, long and complex product cost calculations, right? This is really that's what the difference is between a CPQ application and a cost-based quoting application. So what tools are usually in place? We see, this is a nice statistic here, that 58% of CFOs are focused on providing objective insight and analysis, but do they really have the right tools, right? So we always look at a lot of prospects I talk to, we look at data sources such as MES or shop floor systems. We look at ERP systems. We look at other data systems, business warehouses. And what happens is all this data is it's in the space of a transactional space, right? So when we talk about ERP systems, they are transactional systems and they're made to transact, right? There's some business warehouse systems that they are supposed to really filter out the specific data sets, and then you are able to, it's supposed to make it easier for you to create some insightful reports, right? And of course, you have these transactional-based production data systems that are out there. Now, all of these three things have in common that they're all based on historical data. They're all backward looking. Think about it, right? Nothing in the ERP system that you have today is forward looking or predictive. Everything is transactional based, and that's okay. That is the purpose of your transactional ERP system, right? The misconception that happens in the market is, and so a lot of companies are trying to do analytical capabilities in transactional systems, right? Which is not the right place to do this, right? So our space that we call is, we say we want to be the engine that uses all this historical data to help you and your organization to come up with an analytical tool, an analytical platform to combine all this historical data from multiple sources, put it in one platform, you put in some assumptions about that you expect in future and become more forward-looking, right? What happens today that we see, excuse me, when we talk to prospects is, so, well, yeah, we do this in Excel, right? We copy and paste from our ERP system, we copy and paste from our shop floor system, we copy and paste from our business warehouse systems, and we copy it every time into an Excel spreadsheet, and then Excel is supposed to calculate. Now let's think about this for a second, right? So you spend millions and millions of dollars on your ERP systems, getting them working the way you need to be working. You spend millions and millions of dollars on your shop floor and MES data systems, just to make sure we're recording everything that happens on a production floor. You spend millions and millions of dollars on your business warehouse systems to say, oh, well, because I need nice reports, right? But when it comes to the notion of making a decision of taking on a new business at a specific cost, at a specific margin, at a specific price, it is done in Excel, right? There's something that's a big oxymoron right there, right? So at least you should spend the same amount of money, invest the same amount of effort and money in getting an analytical system that supports the forward-looking decision-making just as much as the looking in the back mirror decision-making. Right? It just makes sense. All right, so can you do this in ERP? Can we do cost-based quoting in ERP? So again, as I mentioned, ERP systems are a collection of transactional systems, not analytical natured, and that's okay. That's what they're there for, right? So the whole point I was trying to explain, and I got a little too excited. I got a little bit of a jump start, but analytical, purposeful or meaningful activities require dynamic systems where you can adjust your inputs, your rules, your assumptions, without affecting your transactional data, but still considering it and calculating results that help you make a better decision looking forward, right? So can you do this in ERP? Yeah, maybe if you spend millions and millions and try to come up with a couple of views, but you're still going to end up in Excel, right? And so our approach is, to a good cost-based quoting application is get a system that integrates all the relevant data and its analytical nature, such as our tool, Impact ECS. So integrating systems and data enables the path to cost-based quoting. So what happens, right? So usually when we talk to prospects, this is a good picture that how we try to explain what Impact ECS does. So we have a new request that comes in that can be through a CRM system, through a website, wherever it might be. There's some existing BOM routings and attribute data somewhere. Maybe sometimes they're in an ERP system, sometimes they're in a quality management, quality control system, and there's also some other data sources, right? Raw material prices, commodity price tables, industry industry averages, you name it. Right? And what happens is we need to integrate all this information into one platform, one environment that performs an integrated cost and profit calculation, bottoms up, at the lowest granularity, detail of granularity, applies the margins and comes up with sets of results that gives you product cost and profits, as well as strategic insights looking forward. Right? Good. I think this is a good picture. So get the right data to the right place and let a calculation engine, not Excel, calculate very specific results. Right? And this notion of simulation is also an important one before I jump to some real life examples, because we all know business changes so fast. We need to be able to be agile, to act in an agile manner. And in order to do that, we need an engine where we can simply change some assumptions, simply change some inputs, and recalculate our expected margins and profits that we expect. Right? All right. Having said that, I want to jump to inside of our Software Impact ECS and show you guys a couple of examples how our customers use Impact as a cost-based quoting application. Open Impact ECS. And so Impact ECS is, this is the Impact ECS desktop client. There's also a web-based version out there. I'm going to be operating in this desktop client for this demo purpose. And what I pulled up is, first of all, is a daily status dashboard, right? And let's think about the notion of cost-based quoting. So once you will log on the system, the first thing you see is, here's all my quotes that are being worked on right now. Here's all my requests that came in, and some of them are being worked on, and some of them have been processed. But here's my users that have been assigned. This is in review. This is in progress. Some of them are complete, right? But this is a good daily status dashboard. Here's what's going on today, right? Another example of that is this dashboard, where we can, I'm going to filter some things. I can say, here's my quotes right now that are ongoing. Here's all my customers. I have 2 RFQs. I have 1 quote that was submitted. I have 1 in progress, and 3 RFQs that was already submitted to the customer. Right? So this is a good example of, I can control the process. I can see what's going on. And now let's go back to this example with, I want to now think about, okay, I want to drill down into one of these cost estimates. What I can simply do is double click, and it brings me to the entire cost object, what we call, and this cost object has all information that is related to this estimate or quote, right? It means these are the 2 unique items that are quoted, right? I can drill down into one, and here's all my plastics component, my electronic cost, my fabric cost, metal cost. I can play around with the width and length, so the attribute data that make up the cost of it. Here's my metal cost. I can play around with some metal cost assumptions. Here I can make decisions about make versus buy. So what happens if we decide to outsource this instead of making it, right? What is it going to do to my overall profitability? Here's my packaging material cost that heavily based on width or inches or surface areas, right? Everything is automatically calculated. And the key is, there's a lot of inputs that go into such a request. The key is, have a system in place that systemizes your tribal knowledge that you have acquired over years and years of experience, and have it calculate automatically all these sets of results, so you can spend your time analyzing this and not plugging in numbers and trying to calculate it right in Excel. Right? So this is just an example. Here's a whole cost summary broken down by plastic cost. Here's my plastic cost, my labor, my decoration cost, all these kind of things. My electronic cost. Here's just we can also handle multiple currencies, which is also a pretty complex topic itself, right? And I have some reports that I can pull up with component cost summaries, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I also want to show you the advantage of having a enterprise class system that hosts your or runs your cost-based quoting application. Is, you know, not only can you put attachments here, but you have an entire overview of who has done what change at what time in what place in this current quote, right? That also means there's an automatic version control on here. You can have as many versions as you want, and you never lose track of it, right? Because what happens is, you know, we send the sales guy a quote, and then it's modified 2-3 times, and then we accept this, and it's never comparable anymore to the original request that came in, right? So here we try to keep it all in one place. We have a whole story, what has happened from when the request came in to all the way when the sale actually happened. Right. So that's I think that's a good example. Another example I want to show you is this kind of screen. This is a screen that we call a form, and here's just a couple of steps that some of our customers go through, right? They have these queues or estimator views where they can view quotes and estimates, or from a management point of view, they can view quotes from an estimator point of view. What quotes are available to me? Which quotes do I need to be working on? I can also make assumptions around the manufacturing environment. So I want to make sure have a smart way of, based on these attributes and these manufacturing production requirements, I want the system to pick the best place and best machine to produce at, right? So all these kind of automated mechanisms we put into our software, right? So we can view all plants and machines, we can set press rates, speeds, we can create new presses if we want to, if we need it. Basically anything that goes into the manufacturing environment of BOMs and routings, we can control here, right? And then, of course, we have this space of quote analysis. We can evaluate individual quotes. We can analyze estimates and trends. What do we see based on a certain industry? What kind of trends do we see, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, there's a model administration tab. That's just part of a good system that we have in place, right? Some of our cost-based quoting applications look similar to this, right? We have a project title, right? We have it automatically picked by its prepared by. So just a bunch of input that comes in, a description, some recommendations. We may be able to upload some CAD drawings, and then we calculate kind of a sort of a summarized view of cost and feasibility for these particular projects, for these particular quotes. Right. Also want to show you this kind of experience. So we have a lot of times what we find is based on the role that people play in the organization, they have different views. So this is a form where, based on a sector director, I can create a new quote, I can update quote, I can look at them, or I can launch some dashboards that give me some what quotes are out there today, how's my profitability look, right? And some of them might look just like this, where they say, here's my quotes out there, here's my quote submitted, here's my estimated, based on quantity, here's my estimated gross sales, net sales, gross margins, thing, and I also can put some filters in here. What's my contribution margin? Where's my contribution margin running out of whack? I might need to drill down to some of these where I see a little red flag here. Right? So all these kind of automated transforming a big amount of data matching it up to a very specific request for a new quote, a new product cost process, calculating it into an engine, applying revenue, calculating margins, and then putting it into a format where people spend more time analyzing these quotes instead of creating them. That is the overall goal, and this is the result that we are able to achieve with Impact ECS. Right. So I thought that was a good example. This is another example where we have an overview of a project or volume by year by customer, what's going to happen. A lot of times when we want to quote something over multiple years, what is my profitability? What is my over the years? When am I going to make money with it? Is it going to take 1-2 years to make money with it? So all these kind of very forward-looking profitability calculations we handle, and a lot of times we come up with a whole customer profitability view, so to say, right? All right. So another example is this one here. This is in the medical field, right? So I have some quote notes, some scenario details. So what if I want to produce it in Croatia or in India? How does it differ in terms of my margins, right? So a lot of times what we do for our customers is we calculate based on attribute data and based on production requirements. We say, okay, it's possible to produce this in Croatia, in India, and based on this, calculate both of these possibilities and tell me what the margin would be, right? That becomes very important when we need to consider capacity utilization at each locations, that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very valuable systemized approach, right? So here we see our top-level assemblies, some our BOM and raw materials and routings that we see. Our make versus buy items that might be different between Croatia and India. Here's my rates that I'm applying, right? Such as things as depreciation rates, freight rates, all these kind of things come into play. SG&A, so this is a whole rates calculation based on, I'm going to produce this in Croatia or based in India. What are my material values? Here's all my components that have raw material prices. And here's my part numbers that I've matched. These material prices can come from a lot of sources. Sometimes they come from an online catalog. Sometimes they come from an ERP system. Sometimes they come from a purchasing department, right? But just know that, we can create multiple scenarios around this raw material prices. One example being, hey, instead of, either take the last purchase price on the PO of this material in my ERP system, or calculate my 3-month weighted average based on my POs of this raw material. So all these kind of smart selections of raw material price methodology we can build into our cost-based quoting application. Also, we have the capability to calculate on a very detailed level labor. What labor is going to be required at what step of assembly, and how does it all come together back into a structured bill of material, and how does it all come together into a, so to say, small quote-based P&L, right? Here's all my cost of goods sold that I'm expecting. Here's my revenue that I expect. And here's my margins that I'm expecting. My gross margin, contribution margin, et cetera, et cetera. Right? And I might want to compare this based if I produce it in Croatia or if I produce it in India, for example. Right? So I thought that was a good example.
Hey, Adrian.
So that's a good one.
Do you mind if I pop in with a question? We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So someone was wanting a little more information about when you're using the word quotes. And the question is, what confidence is there in using the quote for actual sourcing negotiations? Like, how confident are you in using this information to do actual sourcing?
Yeah, that comes into play when we talk about actual sourcing information. So does that mean actual sourcing? Does it mean, okay, am I going to buy certain components from certain vendors, or am I going to create simulations on an ad hoc basis when I'm sitting there and say, okay, in order to achieve this kind of 2% higher margin, I need to reduce cost in these kind of areas,
Hey,
right? So
I'm not sure the answer to that, but I'm happy to promote Heath into the call if you'd like to go ahead and ask some more clarifying questions. Heath, are you there? Hello?
yeah.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
there he is. Hey, Heath, how are you? Welcome to the webinar.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll just be really briefly. What we typically do is with information that we have, we usually bid out several quotes for information, and then we take the compilation of that information and then we use that for our sourcing negotiation. So just understanding what it is we're calling quotes or versus using it for actual sourcing negotiation, where I might bid out for a bunch of quotes or use this information as one of the quotes that I might get from several different customers or suppliers to use that in my end. So is that kind of what you're referring to as part of that negotiation strategy, or something different to that or supplemental to that?
Yeah, so no, I am definitely referring to that. That is definitely one use case. We have a customer, you might know them, they're called MJ Entertainment, so they own Little Tikes, and basically what they do, they say, okay, I have all these, 100 components that go into a Little Tike toy, and these are the 5 components I want to basically bid out to vendors, receive bids back, select the lowest cost or most valuable supplier, and then incorporate this into my overall pricing or cost and pricing for before I submit the quote to Walmart, what am I going to sell to Little Tikes toy for, right? So we definitely use it as a real-time tool for sourcing decisions. Does that make sense to you?
Yep, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a great example. That's one use case. Another use case is, a lot of times we find in negotiation process, what happens is, an executive comes in and says, well, we really need to be at 22% of gross margin, not 18% gross margin. So, we have some simulation capabilities where we say, hey, if we want to increase margins, here are the two areas that we can influence, that we have control over, and that's where we should start looking to increase that margin, right? And so it comes in very valuable when we talk about simulations in a management review meeting, for example. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really excited you jumped into the call. That's super exciting. Right? Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the presentation. I showed a couple of examples, and again, I am 100% aware of everybody has a different process. Everybody is, everybody's cost-based quoting process, so to say, is a little bit different. There's different components, different processes that go into it, different stakeholders, different set of data. But I'm just showing you some examples of what we see out here in the industry, right? So for a successful cost-based quoting process, what are some of the must-haves? Right? So must-haves, what we've seen in our implementations are, you need to include the entire organization. You can't just go on your own and say, oh, I need this tool, right? There's a bunch of stakeholders involved in it, and they need to be heard. They need to be listened to, so you need to include the entire organization. You also need to establish a dynamic and integrated process without having, without all these non-value-add activities of copying and pasting data from one system to another. All right. You also need to have the ability to have quick access to cost results, be it for calculating results the first time, or changing assumptions and recalculating it, or having revisions, right? And of course, you need to have some insights about how do I calculate my margins and how do I protect these margins, right? And that topic of simulations comes into play in a very, very valuable manner there. Right? So the big takeaway for today is, cost-based quoting basically transforms data to create cost and profit results that drive more profitable actions across your organization. There's a lot of people involved, there's a lot of data involved, there's a lot of data sources involved, and you should not rely on a $19.99 per month subscription on making decisions of, should we take on this business or should we not take it on this business at this price, right? So please, I appeal to you, take this to heart, think about it. How does your organization make decisions of taking on new business, right? This is the overall process. This is what Impact ECS delivers in terms of cost-based quoting applications. We take the requests, we take the existing BOM routing attribute data and cost data, take other source data such as raw material prices, integrate it all into one platform and produce results of product costs, cost and profits, and strategic insights looking forward. So at this point, any further questions? I know we still got 8 minutes. I want to be respectful to the time. Hope there's more questions. And if not, Heath, if you have a different question, let's talk about it. I was really excited you joined the call.
I don't have any pending questions right now, Adrian, but one thing that always comes up is asking when the information will be available. So look out for an email tomorrow from 3C Software with info on how to get a copy of the recording as well as the presentation deck. But I don't have any other questions from the audience, but as you can see, we are here and actually live, so you can raise your hand and I'm happy to promote you into the call, or we can just kind of let you give your final thoughts while we're waiting for any last questions to come in.
Yeah, no, I was. Let's give it maybe 1 or 2 minutes before we jump into the goodbye slide. But yeah, again, I cannot stress enough. Right, it is truly amazing when what we see in the industry or in many industries, across many industries, that people spend millions and millions of dollars on transactional systems, and when it comes to a decision of how should we take on new business, where can we cut costs, how should we calculate our profits and margins for new products, truly from the bottom up, right? With all these data in there, from all these data sources, and all this tribal knowledge that's in your organization, right? Why shouldn't we systemize it and have one platform that combines it all, is auditable, secure, and purely a calculation engine that does it for you and gives you the valuable time of analyzing it instead of manipulating it. Right?
Cool. Hey, I'm going to pop right in. Hey, Heath, I unmuted you again. If you want to go ahead and ask another question, you're welcome to.
Sure, thank you. Just 2 quick questions. Thank you very much, Adrian, again for the presentation. 2 quick questions. One, the customization of it, it looks to be fairly easy user interface wise. So just wanted to know a little bit more about how easy it is to customize all the different features. I know you went through it kind of quick, but then the other thing is you briefly mentioned you have a web-based as well. Is there any different features or anything else, or is it basically just kind of the same, just in a cloud-based environment? If you could talk to that real quick.
Yeah, and I want to appreciate it. So let's address the first question of, the customization aspect, right? So Impact ECS, the software that you've seen out of the box, comes as a 85% complete solution, right? And basically what it means, I always compare it to Microsoft Word, right? You install Microsoft Word, and if somebody would tell, hey, Adrian, hey, Eve, write up a letter, we would start writing with the same set of tools that are in Microsoft Word, but our words would be different, our letter would look different, right? So what we have done as a software approach, we created a platform, and our software comes out of the box with all this entire tool set to integrate data from from multiple sources, enrich the data, apply calculations to your data, and calculate results, right? That's what O does. Now, the methodology of how to calculate results is always different from company to company, right, and in use case. So when you talk about customization, other than, Excel, we have a calculation engine that is written in plain English. So when, instead of saying, multiply A1 with A2, we say, okay, multiply the volume divided by the speed, multiply it by the speed, multiply it by whatever it might be, right? So this is how we calculate. So we have a whole calculation engine, and that builds up to this remaining 15% of the solution, what we call then configured models. So we create this configured models with the help of our tool set, right? So is everybody custom? Yeah, a little bit, right? But there's still the value of having a whole framework around it of systemizing your tribal knowledge instead of having it in Excel and having it in a transparent, auditable system, right? So that's to answer your first question. The second question.
He asked about the online experience, the web experience.
The online experience, the web experience. That's right. So our web experience is basically it's browser based, and what it serves, it has, I would say, 90% of the features than the desktop. However, it's a little bit like when you go on Office 365 online versus your desktop version. There's pretty much all the functionalities that you need or need to do, but most clients use our web version more as a role-based reporting engine. They want to maybe make a quick simulation on a high level, but leave all the administrative and model administrative tasks to the super users who mainly use the desktop client, so to say. That's really the differences. Right? From a functionality point of view, there's not much difference. Right?
Excellent. I have one more question for you, Adrian, from John, and he's asking about the data involved in building some of these cost-based quoting systems. So how much does Impact ECS automate, where possible, the sourcing of the transactional data?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? So the first question you need to answer, how real-time do you need to be really? Right? So that's the thing. We can be as real-time as needed. We have customers where, every night we process a job basically that goes and gets all the transactional data. We have customers that kick it off every hour and just look for the net changes. We have customers that have a button that want to kick it off ad hoc because, hey, I'm working on this really important quote right now, and I need my latest and greatest material prices right now that are in my ERP system, right? So the automation of the data integration is really as real time as you need it to be, right? And it might be that, once a month you get some industry indexes that you want to that you need to update, and they come in automatically as a job whenever they're published from a web service. And there might be another task where you say, okay, if a new, I want to check every night if a new material has been created, and if so, integrate the newest build material and routing for that material inside of Impact, right? So the data integration is a very fundamental part of our project for sure. But you know, the connectivity and the integration of data nowadays has jumped with such an advancement in the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, with open APIs and integration points, takeover points, that it's really not a problem to integrate data. It's more of a business discussion. How real time do we need this data to come in, and when does it really actually add value to it?
Excellent. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and jump in because we're just a couple minutes over time, and I want to make sure that we get everyone off into where they need to be next this afternoon. So thanks, Adrian, for hanging out with us this afternoon. Thanks for everyone joining the call. You can see Adrian's contact info here on the screen. We did have a couple of more questions come in right as we were wrapping up. So either Adrian or myself or someone from our team will certainly follow up with you afterwards. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon.